Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Space Tunnel for the Atari 2600, or Weltraum Tunnel if you have a German copy of the game like me, or Cosmic Corridor if you have the US release from Zymac. But since that one's most likely a bootleg, I hunted down the Bitcorp release from the land of my ancestors, and the land of Bratwurst. Anyway, in this 1982 shoot-'em-up from Bit Corporation, your interplanetary exploration craft has been sucked into a UFO-filled space tunnel, or Weltraum tunnel, and you've got to fight your way out. At least in theory, because as far as I can tell, you can't ever actually escape the space tunnel. Maybe if you max out the score or something, but I certainly didn't come anywhere close to that. See, Space Tunnel is a scrolling shooter of the endless variety. No matter how many UFOs you destroy, there will always be more waiting. They approach from the top and bottom of the screen and fire missiles at you, which bounce back and forth between the corridor walls. And here we've covered every threat present in this game. UFOs, missiles, and walls. So the key to survival is, don't run into any of them. And blast the enemy spacecraft, obviously. These are mostly medium-sized single UFOs worth 30 points, but sometimes you come across a 40-point extra-wide UFO that looks like it had a classic cartoon encounter with a rolling pin. Or groups of 2 or 3 narrow UFOs worth 50 or 80 points. And these little guys are the Bratwurst. Sorry. Because 2 or 3 enemies on screen means 2 or 3 missiles on screen, as opposed to the standard 1 UFO, 1 missile scenario. But at least the extra missiles disappear when you land a hit on their corresponding spacecraft. Not that I usually survived long enough to make that happen, especially when the missiles get real speedy. As you play, approaching enemies fire faster and faster, until the missile speed resets itself again, which, as far as I can tell, happens after a certain number of UFOs are defeated, or you hit a new score threshold. Every 500 points scored earns you a speed reset and a fancy jingle, and every 1,000 points scored earns you a speed reset, a fancy jingle, and an extra life. Nice. The most novel aspect of Space Tunnel is the scrolling. You control the direction based on whether you're moving up or down, but it's pretty arbitrary because the movement of the screen doesn't actually affect the tracking of the enemy missiles. And your dodging is pretty limited because you're locked in the same vertical position relative to the playfield. But at least your movement serves to aim your blaster. Pressing up, down, left, or right fires in that direction, which is extra useful in games like this where enemy craft pass above and below you. Graphically, Space Tunnel has a lot of good things going for it. The scrolling cavern walls and the ascending and descending explosion debris make for some dynamic visuals, and I love the variety of abstract UFO designs, even if their pixel art is just reused for narrow and wide ships, but with different degrees of classic cartoon rolling pin exposure. For some reason, I also love how your ship's blaster looks like an extended laser beam whenever you shoot downward. Feels more powerful, even if it technically isn't. And one last noteworthy design choice is how the walls change color to signify what type of enemy is approaching, which is neat. The sound design here is pretty intricate for an Atari title, and it really helps set the mood. You've got your standard, tense default music loop, a more high-pitched variation when high-point enemies appear, and of course, the special jingle when you hit score thresholds. Although, this still has a bit of that same stress-inducing effect, because the notes tend to fall out of key sometimes and assault your ears with this discordant juxtaposition of congratulations, you're doing good, and enjoy it while it lasts, you're about to get atomized. The missile ricochet sounds can also be a bit grating, especially when they get stuck in a wall every once in a while, but I actually like obnoxious 8-bit audio effects like that, so it's all good. Space Tunnel has 4 difficulty settings that adjust the speed of the game. I mostly stuck to the slow, easy mode because I'm the Bratwurst at video games, sorry. But faster modes actually increase the speed of your own ship to offset some of the challenge, so that's a relief. And it makes it much easier to dodge the high-speed missiles. But just in case you want an even more ridiculous challenge, setting the Atari's difficulty switches from B to A makes your ship extra wide, as if it had that same classic cartoon rolling pin encounter as the big UFOs. And obviously, this makes avoiding everything way harder. I even ran into the walls a bunch of times when I tried playing this way, and I certainly didn't expect the biggest threat among a swarm of armed aliens to be, well, walls. In any case, I prefer Mode 1 in the narrow ship, and even though I really wanted to get a 5-digit score, 5,000 points was the best I could do. A far cry from ever escaping the old Weltraum tunnel and returning to the land of my ancestors here on Earth. My favorite part of Space Tunnel is the sideways firing mechanic. It's not really necessary most of the time, but that just makes it all the more satisfying to land a sneaky lateral hit on a passing alien. And if I could change one thing here, I'd make your spaceship a little quicker on the default setting, so you have a better chance of dodging the fast missiles. As is, the intermittent projectile speed-ups just feel unfair. Overall, Space Tunnel is a worthwhile scrolling space shooter, in spite of its simplicity. And since I personally can't have Bratwurst due to dietary restrictions, Weltraum Tunnel gives me something else to happily enjoy from the land of my ancestors.